Hi, and welcome to another edition of Studio 411. I'm your host, Larry Dasilva. We'll start today's show with a little trivia question. For those of you familiar with, of course, one of our major cities here, Bridgeport. I did look up, P.T. Barnum wasn't one of them, though. Some famous people that have been born in the Park City, as they call it, Bridgeport. P.T. was actually born in Bethel, just for the record. But anyway, Robert Mitchum, the famous actor, was born and lived quite a while in Bridgeport. The late actress Deborah Wally, who some of you might remember from Gidget, the Mother-in-Law's TV series, and the Beach Party movie, she was another one. And then our guest tonight, who was, again, born in the Park City, Bridgeport, a few years ago. Singer-songwriter Gary DeCarlo, and some of you may say, Gary who? Well, Gary, again, you know him and yet you don't know him, and he'll shed some light on that. He's the singer and co-writer of the classic Na Na Hey Hey Kiss Him Goodbye, which was credited to a band named Steam, and that was a big #1 seller back in December of 1969. Actually knocked the Beatles off the Hot 100 in the #1 slot. And Gary joins us today. Gary, thanks for being on.
My pleasure. I'm happy to be on.
Pleasure to have you. Gary, by the way, has a new CD out, Gary DeCarlo and Steam, called Long Time Coming, and we'll touch base a little on that as well. But again, a few years between the late 60s, early 70s, and today, and
yeah, absolutely.
And I think,
as they say, it's a long time between drinks.
I was going to say, when I saw the title of the CD, I thought to myself, "There's a message there behind that." And
yeah, absolutely. I wanted to do something like this, but it took a while for me to get my head straight, because of what happened. And eventually I just said, I got to get back to it. I was dealing with my family, seeing my daughters growing up, and I wanted to get back to it.
Yeah.
My wife kept saying to me, get a hobby.
Get
I
a
said,
hobby.
Music is my hobby.
That's it, exactly. It's a passion. Just for the record, we've got an image over here which some of you might have seen on television, some of the fine work that PBS does, and Gary has been part of one of the T.J. Lubinsky epic productions, and
yeah, absolutely.
We'll get into that a little later on. But again, you did your number on there, and actually a kind of a life-altering experience in some ways.
Well, for me, yeah, it was many years between me being on stage, but that was the largest audience that I was in front of many years. So it was a little shaky for me, but I was happy to be there, and the response I got from the audience, it was unbelievable. I had 13 background singers on stage, and the band was incredible. But the people were all up dancing and singing, and it was a really nice. Closed the show.
And as you were saying, the way that a lot of those shows are done, I mean, because I had read there were like 59 different acts.
Oh yeah,
on
absolutely.
there over a 3-day period.
Yeah. I don't know how they did it, but everything was done professionally. It was great. I mean, they have food for you. They had someone pick you up at the airport. They brought you to your hotel. Then they had a car that brought you to the rehearsal for sound check and brought you back. It was amazing. It was great.
There you go. Well, as I said at the intro, of course, grew up in the city of Bridgeport. We were reminiscing before the show started about certain haunts and different places that we all knew as kids. And of course, as I was saying, Gary went, for those of you who know the area, went to Central High for a brief time and lived in quite a few different areas of the city.
Oh, please. I swear, we're like gypsies, man. We were all over the place. But, I enjoyed my childhood. I grew up with my mother and my sister. My mother left my father before I was 3 years old. And she was always working She did her best for us, and she was my friend. She was a great lady. I still think about her all the time. She was good people.
There you go.
And she put a roof over our head and fed us and everything. So that's all you could ask for.
That's all you can ask for. Growing up, who were some of your musical influences? Because I have to believe.
Well, my father played guitar and he was a singer, and my sister also sang. My sister, at I don't know what maybe 6 or 7 years old, she was singing with my father in some of the clubs, and she was supposed to go to California and audition to take Shirley Temple's place in California, but the war was on with Japan, so my mother was afraid to go there, and she never went. But my mother sang. She was shy, so she wouldn't get in front of an audience. But my father sang, my sister sang, all my fathers, the brothers, they sang, played guitar, and my other uncle loved to dance, so he would show us how to do the two-step and the bop and everything. And it just, I guess it was just ingrained in me, man, because I was around so much music. But what really got me crazy was someone said to me, "Gary, you got to listen to this show on the radio." And that night, I set it onto the channel, and you had to wait for it. It was blank. There was nothing on there. And then all of a sudden, you heard the wolf, you know, woo, and then it came on. It was Moondog. It was the Alan Freed show.
Wow.
And,
out of New York.
And
then,
man,
yeah.
I heard some music. I said, "Oh my God!" I said, "I love this, man." It was so different from the mainstream of what was happening back in those days, because it was all like the big band kind of stuff, Tony Bennett, you know, the show tunes, that type of stuff. They were even doing that even in the high schools. So for this was very different, and it just opened up a door, and it opened up my mind. I went nuts. I said,
that must have been what? That was AM radio, of course, because AM radio back in those days.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So that would have been probably probably on WMCA after he
you know what? I
Cleveland.
cannot remember what station he was on, but I'm telling you, when I heard that, I listened to it every time it was on, and just, you know, the harmonies and everything. It was incredible. Great music.
Now, as a young boy, you were telling me earlier that by the age of, what, 15, 16, at that point you were already getting into some bands, correct?
Well, yeah, I actually started playing drums like around the age of 11. My cousin gave me a set of drums. He had bought a new set, and he knew that I was very interested, because he used to take me to the clubs with him in Bridgeport. As a matter of fact, he played that club that we were talking about, the Calypso, and a couple of clubs in Hamden and stuff. And I would just go there. He had a little jazz trio, and very, very good. So I would just sit there. I was like amazed, man. And it got to the point where he knew I was into it, so he gave me the drums. So I started playing the drums, and my mind was always on wanting to do a doo-wop group. So I tried to do it with my friends, but it didn't work out. You know, they didn't want to put the amount of time and dedication into it that it takes to put something together.
Sure.
They think you're just going to stand there and sing, and boom, you're going to do it. It doesn't work that way. So eventually, I started delivering auto parts when I turned 16, right between 16 and 17 years old. I was delivering auto parts for a store on North Avenue in Bridgeport. And the counterman, this guy Joe Reed, was in a vocal group at the time called the Glenwoods. And we became friends, and he knew how much I loved singing and wanted to get into a group. So one of their guys, Dennis, was leaving their group, and he asked me, he said, "Would you like to come and try out for the group?" And I said, "Absolutely, man." So I went there, I tried out, they liked me, and I stayed in the group. I stayed in the group probably for like 5 years.
And now, which group was this?
It was called the Glenwoods. We were called also the Chateaus, and we were called the Citations.
Citations, and
we had records out under the name of the Glenwoods, which was That's the Way It'll Be, and the backside was Elaine, and the Chateaus was Summers Here, School is Through, and I'm trying to think. Jimmy's going to be mad at me. I can't think of the name of it.
Now, you're also in a band called Gary and the Coachmen.
Yeah, I did.
That was
Gary and the
later
Coachmen.
on.
That was a horn band.
Yeah.
And we were playing. We used to play the roadside. We played a lot of the clubs in that area, and I always loved this band. That there was a picture up there before. It was called the Orchids. They were the best band in the area. And one night they came down. Their drummer was going into the service, and they needed a drummer. And they came down there, and they asked me. They said, "Gary, would you like to come into the group?" I said, "Are you kidding?" So I brought Billy, which was my drummer. We both joined the Orchids, and what a band! I'm telling you, this guy Lionel Chamberlain, man. Best guitar player you ever want to hear. Passed away too young, but what a guitar player. Amazing.
We're here with our guest today, Gary DeCarlo. Of course, many of you know him from the song "Na Na Hey Hey Kiss 'Em Goodbye," which at last count has sold in the ensuing 40 years upwards of 7 million copies, which is just phenomenal. And you can't go, as they say, you can't go to a sporting event or any outdoor event without hearing a version of it played.
Yeah, it really caught on in 1978. The organ player for the Chicago White Sox had the sheet music, and she started playing it. This is, you know, what the way I was told. But after reading and finding out more about it, she was a young girl, and back in those days, there were all men playing the organ for you know.
Like the
so
Yankees,
there was kind of like a little bit of a resentment there because she was a female. But when she started playing the organ, she started playing all the new songs, whereas before the guys would be playing like "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" and that kind of stuff. She started playing stuff that was mainstream, stuff that was on the radio. So when she started to play Nana on the organ, the people started to sing it, and eventually the whole stadium was singing it. And then it became Chicago White Sox, their song. And from there, it spilled over into all the teams are using it: football, baseball, soccer, hockey, everything. The only sport that I know of that didn't use it was golf.
Gotcha. Yeah. Maybe it was a hole-in-one or an eagle, perhaps. Yeah. But yeah, no, I can remember cities like Milwaukee, Cleveland, Chicago, especially a lot of your Midwestern ones.
Absolutely.
Someone would hit a home run, or a starting pitcher would get, you know, shelled and get taken out of the game, and especially late in the game, and they would play that. And of course, you know, it was great. Even if you were watching, let's say, a Yankee or a Met game on television, or Red Sox, and they were at the visitors' park, and you'd hear that. And of course, you know, being that I'm from a little bit from that era, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I know that record.
Well, it's still used. Ellen DeGeneres uses it on her show. She's saying she has a segment where they have to answer the question, and if they get it wrong, you know, they sing "Kiss 'Em Goodbye." And then I guess there was a show on, the American Gladiators.
Yes,
they used to use it too. But I mean, it's been done so many different times, and we just had a Sprint commercial that was I don't know if it's still happening, but it was over the last 2 months, which was the latest one.
And every time I'm hearing the sounds of the cash register every time.
Well, you know what? Thank God for the writing. I have to say, if I didn't get the writing, I wouldn't have been able to send my kids to college. I wouldn't be living in Shelton. So I mean, it made a big difference in my life.
And we talked about this, and I've talked about this with other musicians, some of whom have been on the program. Not divulging specific numbers, but a lot of people don't understand that, again, the singer or singers or group, whatever, doesn't get, like, you know, necessarily a large cut of when something is played.
Not at all.
You know, It's the songwriter, and again, obviously in your case.
Yeah, and you have to deal with also the publisher too.
Right.
For example, there's 3 writers on Na Na. You have 100% you work with. 50% goes to the publisher. 50% gets split 3 ways.
Gotcha.
And in Europe, our split was not 1/3; it was 1/16.
1/16.
Yeah. So again, if you if you think about it, like for example, me as an artist back then, I was supposed to be getting at least 3.5 points. 3.5%. They gave me a point.
Right.
So I mean, at that time, I thought, wow, point. Sounds like it's good.
Yeah, it was kind of like, yeah.
Points better than nothing, right? But after you find out that it should have been more, but it doesn't matter anyway because they stopped paying me in '74, so that was the end of that.
As far as what you mean, so in other words, now you don't get royalty rights.
I don't get artist royalty, no.
Oh no, but still songwriting.
Still get paid.
Gotcha,
I still get paid for writing.
So that's the key.
Yeah, I was co-writer on all the songs on the Steam album.
Right.
Sang background and did percussion on the entire album.
Now the Rushed Steam album, and there was a shot of it here earlier. I'll point it out when we come through it again. Peaked at, I think it was number 89, and I thought, well, that's not bad. I mean, you got into the top 100, but at that time, given that you had a #1 single that was on Billboard's #1 list for 2 weeks, again,
right.
knocked the Beatles and I forget, it
it
Come Together, whatever.
I don't know. I've heard conflicting stories, so I don't know what the real, because I had moved on from that point, but I was told that they waited too long to put out the second single. I don't know if that's true or not, but basically what I feel, and I still say it today, and I said it back then, it was overkill with all the Na Na that was used on the album also.
Right.
I think that it was too much.
Right.
Because there were songs on there that didn't need it. Just use the song. You didn't need to put.
Also, in other words, album tracks had that same
style. Paul
going.
wanted to use the Na Na on different songs.
Right.
And it did, Na Na Hey Hey and that kind of stuff.
No, definitely overkill. And like you said, the timeliness of it, if the album came out too late, because again, we'll get into the reasons why. Some of it, because again, personnel and this, that, and the other. The song itself, the genesis of the song actually goes back to the early 60s, correct?
Yeah, we had an office above the bus terminal on, I can never think of it.
State Street? Or,
No. You know where the bus terminal is now?
Right.
The big one?
Yeah.
All right, what's that street?
Oh, yeah,
where
I'm blanking.
What was that? The Boys Club, the post office used to be there.
Yeah.
All right, well, anyway, above the bus terminal that was there at that time, they had Greyhounds and stuff that would go there. We had an office, and that's where Na Na was written. Na Na was written as a blues shuffle, so the hook was not there, wasn't born yet. Na Na hadn't.
It was basically just Kiss Him Goodbye.
It was just Kiss Him Goodbye, like I said, was a blues shuffle. And the B side of it also, It's the Magic in You, that was written there also at the same time, within the same span time.
And so
frame.
this track, what became of it? It kind of just got tucked away in the corner for a few years, or
yeah, it just stayed in. I don't know, I guess it just stayed in a book, or in our minds or something, I don't know. But what happened was I cut 4 sides for Mercury. I cut 2 Neil Sedaka songs, Working on a Groovy Thing, Sugar. I cut a Van McCoy song, and I cut Larry Weiss's song, Sweet Laura Lee.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, Working on a Groovy Thing was supposed to be my A side. When Erwin Schuster brought it over to me, the first time I heard it, I said, I want to do that song. I like it. I really liked it. The Fifth Dimension found out, and they pulled it off of their album and beat me by 1 week.
Wow, yeah.
So theirs came out, and I mean, with the momentum that they had going, with all the hits off of that album, there was no way in the world that I could put mine out. I was dead. So we needed to go back to the drawing board, and Paul and the company wanted me to put out Sweet Lauralee, which was a ballad, and I was skeptical because I like up-tempo things, and I didn't want to lead with a ballad. I'd rather come out, you know, punching with something with a beat. And they convinced me, and they said, look, we're going to work the record, you know, we'll bring it home for you, don't worry. I said, okay. So now we needed a B-side. So I said to Dale, because Paul and I were always kind of choppy, you know, and we weren't really getting along that well at that time. And I said to Dale, tell Paul I want to do Kiss 'Em Goodbye. So he did, and we went into the studio that night, and he pulled an 8-bar drum loop off of the other Neil Sedaka song, which was Sugar.
Right.
And then the piano was overdubbed. What he did was he put the masking tape on the strings of the piano. So if you listen to the record, you hear that diddle-dun-dun-dun. Well, he did it so that he went diddle-dun-dun-dun, diddle-dun-dun-dun, diddle-dun-dun-dun. He sandwiched those together individually so that he had different sounds. He had a low range, mid range, and a high range.
Because when I hear the record, I always think of a guy like Lionel Hampton. I thought someone was playing.
No, there are vibes on there.
Oh, there are vibes. Okay.
So it's the piano overdub, it's organ, which was a B3 organ, vibes, and then I played percussion on a board. They brought in a speaker for the Hammond for the organ, and there was you know how they put they have the boards on the bottom to keep it from getting damaged. Well, one of the boards was about that big, and it fell off. So Paul held it up. We put cloth on the tips of the drumsticks, and I played on it like that. And that's that percussion that you hear on it.
Gotcha.
on the single.
Amazing. Hard to do.
And that's it. No guitar, no bass.
Yeah.
And we did all the background. And like I said, he was at the piano, and he was running over it, and he had the chant all na-na. It was na-na-na-na, na-na-na-na, na-na-na, goodbye. So when it went through it, and it went through it the second time, I threw Hey Hey in, and it worked and stayed that way.
Now, how long? It sounds like the mounting of the production took quite a while. I know in those days, like, you know, the Beatles' first album was done in 2 days. I mean, how long would it take to do?
Not really. We went in 7 o'clock that night at Mercury in New York City, and by 5 in the morning, it was done just the way you hear it on the radio. Wow. It just had to be mastered.
Now
there was magic there.
Now it would be 6 months for some of these singles, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why, like, in the late 70s, if you recall, bands like Fleetwood Mac and countless others, they failed to capitalize on the momentum, even though they may have had 5 or 6 hits off of an album, because they took 2, 3, 4 years in some cases to come out with a follow-up album. And then
sometimes they take too long to make decisions. I had a very good friend that was working with Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and he told me that they would argue over one note in harmony, and he said it would take them days, sometimes a week, you know, because he was amazed, because I would just go and do a harmony and just boom, do a harmony over it, and he said he couldn't figure out why they.
Well, that's why, in my opinion, guys like vocalists, like I'll give you an example, Hall and Oates, you know, for years, you know, during their heyday from the 70s until like the mid to late 80s, every like sometimes twice a year, album. The same thing can be said, bands like the Beatles, the Stones, even Zeppelin, at least every year and a half. Now, you know, and so many of them, I don't even know now. They have so much technology, so much, but like you said, if there's a lot of like creative friction going on, it should be helpful.
Oh yeah, if there's too many, there's
sometimes there's too much.
There's too many chefs. You know what I mean.
Yeah.
It took me a year to do this, the second CD, but that's because I was taking my time. I didn't want to step on Long Time Coming,
Right.
and I just took my time with it. I figured that there's no rush, and besides, I could only get into the studio. It's very busy, so I could only get in like 1 day, sometimes 2 days a week, and you know, for maybe 4 hours. So I would do whatever I could do,
Sure.
and there was no rush. There was no rush involved.
Speaking of which, long time coming here in front of the old Hotel Savoy, which I remember. I think it looked like that about 30 years ago. I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it was already mothballed then. But Gary DeCarlo and Steam. And I just throw this because I had seen a document online that within the last year or so now you have now owned the trademark to the name Steam.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It took me, I think, almost 2 years to get it because someone else had it, and what I kept saying to them, because they said to me, well, we can't believe your stuff that's on YouTube. You know, we need some type of proof, like a poster or something that shows your name with Steam affiliated. And I'm saying, well, what did this guy show you? So they told me he showed us a ticket stub, a ticket, ripped stick, right, with his name on it. And I said, first of all, I said he's not involved with them. He's not a relative. Has no affiliation to it whatsoever. So how did he get it? But anyway, that's all water under the bridge now.
Amazing. One question that we didn't talk about this off air. In the ensuing 35, 40 years, whatever, again, obviously you did have, again, kind of like a nest egg, we'll call it, from the royalties coming in from the songwriting.
Yeah.
But now what did you know, obviously creatively, you kind of felt stymied because, again, just so people are clued in, you got kind of shut out of the whole process. They recruited a band of guys who you'll see on an album cover we have, that none of them sang on the record.
No.
Went out and performed. There's even some old videos of a so-called Steam band lip syncing to the record, and none of them have anything to do with the original recording.
No, well, that's what I just said to you about how it was made in the studio. There's no guitar on it. There's no bass on it. The drum is actually a loop, so the drummer didn't play on it.
Yeah.
So, and if you watch the guy that's doing percussion in the video, he's not even in sync with the track. And the lead singer, if you look at his mouth, he's nowhere in sync with my vocal. It's amazing. And the reason that all the magic died was because Paul wanted me to sing the entire album and have them go out as me. What started this whole thing was Nana became the B-side of Sweet Lauralee.
Right.
But it was never pressed together. This was just done in the studio, and it said, okay, that's going to be the B-side. But as soon as Paul and the record company heard it, they wanted to put it out individually.
Oh, okay.
They wanted to split it immediately.
So now the story about a DJ like in Georgia or somewhere,
no,
so that's false. In other words,
absolutely.
because that happens many times. I'll give you an example. Great Guess Who record, Burton Cummings. I forget what it was called, Laughing, and the other side was Undone or whatever. And one guy on a late shift one day put the wrong side on, and he started getting phone calls. Nothing wrong with the B-sides.
Right.
Sometimes they're great B-sides.
There's a lot of B-sides.
As a kid growing up, Elton John B-sides, Prince B-sides, Beatles, Beach Boys. You know,
absolutely.
There's a gentleman that I got to meet a few years ago, Lou Simon, who works for Sirius XM, and he always talks about how, you know, the B-side, my God, he goes, it was worth every ounce of those 89 cents or whatever a 45 cost.
Absolutely. There was a lot of B-sides there. I used to always flip the records over because I mean, Little Richard, he had a lot of great B-sides.
That's right. You know what I'm saying?
You know, a lot of the older acts, they didn't worry about putting something crummy. I mean, what I didn't understand then or even now is who would go into a studio with the mentality to waste time and money and energy to do a bad B-side. Why would you do that?
I mean,
makes no sense to me.
I've read stories, again, it's like, it's as good as what is on the page, you have to wonder, but there are instances, I'm sure, where a person, again, I don't even want to use anyone as an example because I don't want to, you know, besmirch the person, but let's say John Doe has, like, you know, a freakish, like, novelty record, and you know, they run into the studio, they cut, you know, in those days 8 or 9, maybe 10 additional tracks. Some of it's like, you know, garbage, you know. And then on the flip side, you have guys, for those who are country fans, that remember the late Jim Reeves, the country singer. You know, he recorded stuff that never saw the light of day for years after he died, and then when the widow realized it, she kept the contract going with RCA for like almost 20 years, and after he was dead, every year they kept putting out an album with his material, because again, he stockpiled stuff like crazy. Obviously it had to have been good because it kept on selling, but sometimes with the novelty records, they just, you know, whatever, sing the alphabet, you know, and they're like, okay, you know, they're just, and then you're buying in those days an album or a CD. Maybe that's why people now download, because they just download one album.
Yeah, absolutely. There are some people that actually don't like to do that. They like a hard copy as opposed to doing a, you know, because you could hold it. You know what I mean? You got something that you could genuinely look at.
And the beauty of it, which is why, again, I mean, that downloading and sampling, all this other stuff is great, but the beauty of even in CD form is that, you know, if you like somebody, like I'll give you an example. When I was in college in the mid-'70s, Bad Company came out. First album was like through the roof. You got to appreciate Marshall Tucker Band, Leonard Skinner, so many others. You got to appreciate every track on that album.
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
to mention all the ones we talked about. Now you know, so-and-so comes out, one track, and then that's actually doing more harm, in my opinion, than good, because then they go out on tour and they're like, oh, those other songs, they were okay, but when you have a chance to listen to them over and over, and then it becomes your second single, your third single, you know, if you're Michael Jackson back in the day, or Taylor Swift today, every track on the album or CD is a hit, you know, either in one form or another. I mean, so to me, like I said, I'm old school that way. You know, I love being able to.
No, I agree with you. I like that too. What's nice too is when I do meet and greets, it's nice because I could sign that for them.
Yeah, there was.
You know what I mean? It's something that they could take home, especially you know, if they're a dedicated fan, which the people that come there usually are. They know. I get such great reaction from people. Some of the stories that they come and tell me, everybody has a good story, you know, of what happened at the time. They always relate to something, and the one that got me the most was I did a show for the people in I guess it was the other side of Scranton, over Scranton,
PA,
and it was called. My friend has the radio show there, Ed Ranieri, the Beat a Lead show, and he asked me if I would come there, and they had a hurricane, I guess, and their homes got flooded and everything, and he said, will you come and do this benefit for it? I said, yeah, okay. So after I came off the stage, this guy came over, and he was with his wife, and he said to me, back in 1969, he said, I was in Vietnam. He said, and he said, we used to huddle around the radio. He said, and we used to listen for your song. He said, and when we heard it, he said, we knew that we were going to come back from our mission.
Wow.
Yeah. That got to me.
Those are, you hear those from artists all the time. There's stories about people that, whether someone was ill or someone was at war or far away from home, and like you said, it gets you, it gets you right where it, you know, it means something. You know, here just we were talking about this. This is actually the an image from the 45.
They were hired as a road
Now
group.
I'm looking on there, and I know these guys all have long hair and mustaches, but I don't see you in that.
No.
So again, now obviously that led to some hard feelings with at least.
Well, yeah, because they were from the same area that I'm from. My kids went to school with their kids, and all this time They lied to their friends, to their family, saying that they made the record and that they played on the record, they did this and they did that, and I had nothing to do with it. And
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I had to endure that for a long time. But you know, now since the TJ show, the people realize that that's my voice, that's me.
Well, again, hearing it from me, because I just watched it again the other night. Your and of course exceptional camera work, and of course you said earlier that 2012 or late 2011, I believe, was when the concert was actually taped. You sounded great. You know, the backup vocals, like I said, it sounded like a Baptist choir behind you. You know, and the orchestra was phenomenal. Those four guys that were your backing group, they were. You could bottle them and take them with you. Let me tell you, that was great. Now I see you in the mid to late '70s. You even did a disco version of the song. I don't recall that, but it would have been interesting.
Believe it or not, that went 12 in the country. They told me that they had showcased it in 2 or 3 of the top discos in New York City, and they said they played it because what I did was I cut I think a 3.5 minute version. But then I edited it into the long version,
right,
which they played in the discos.
Oh, yeah. You get that 33 and a third. That thing would run like 10, 12 minutes. Yeah.
So they said that when they played it, you know, the people were on the floor and everything, and they were. But said when it came to the break, when he got into the percussion and the shake part of it, he said people started coming back on the dance floor. He said, and then they danced. And then they asked for it, and they played it all night. He said they kept asking for it, and they played it. But the thing with that one was I didn't make a nickel from that.
No.
West End, I never made a nickel. I don't know what happened.
Wow, unfortunate. But again, you know, other bands again covered the song. The Supremes, I believe it was after Diana Ross left, Jean Terrell and then Mary Wilson, and the Cindy Bird song as the follow-up Supremes did a version of it. In the late 80s, a Canadian group called the Nylons, that I remember.
Yeah,
it was an a cappella group. They did a real nice version of
yeah, absolutely. Bananarama did it. It went #1 in England.
And here it didn't do much. Yeah.
It didn't do much here because the people that I was doing business with got wind of it, and they tried to put something out, and they butted heads together, and it wound up killing both records.
Yeah, because that was actually released
Which,
before,
you know, they should have just let the Bananarama record go, because it would have been a big record here too.
That was they released that before Cruel Summer, which was in the Karate Kid and was a big hit for them. And but like I said, that was you know, top 5, if not #1 in Europe.
We've had a lot of a couple of years ago, we had Jay-Z had used our hook in his thing called Death of an Auto-Tune, or Death of an Auto-Tune. And then Christina DeBarge, she had a thing out called Goodbye.
Yeah.
A rapper down in Washington, D.C. called Wale, he had a version out called Chillin' with Lady Gaga. And all these songs, they all had Nana in it. You know, which
now how does that work? Again,
that works great. Warner Brothers, they negotiate, and we don't really have to do anything. They get in touch with us and they say, "Is it okay, man?" And we do it.
But I'm saying you get compensated for it. That's great.
Absolutely.
Now I saw something, I didn't even know if you knew this. I got the impression, I'm going to say it was probably the Jay-Z version, if not one of the others you mentioned, that 1 or 2 of those were nominated for a Grammy.
Really?
And then that's what I thought, but then I thought, wait a minute, if it was nominated for a Grammy, then you would have heard about it, because had they won, you would have gotten probably, I don't know if they give the writers
an invitation,
a Grammy. Or an invitation, yeah.
Yeah, because when...
Because I saw something that one of the songs that
I don't know if it was the Nylons or somebody or Bananarama. I think it was the Nylons. That year, we got invited to New York City because BMI. It was one of the most played songs for that year. because of you know, when one song starts to happen and it has Lana in it, it generates people to want to hear the old one again.
Absolutely. Gary DeCarlo joining us for the hour here on Studio 411. Gary DeCarlo and Steam, long time coming, the most recent CD. And you touched on it before, really 2012 was a big year for you, was your first comeback show under your own name.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that was incredible. Henry DeLuca got in touch with me for the TJ show. He books the acts for TJ. And you know, he said to me, would you be willing to do it? And I said, you know, absolutely. Because I had been called by many of the jockeys, well, I can't say many, but a couple of the jockeys here that wanted to put shows together, but the other artists wouldn't commit. They wanted to put Connecticut artists, which at the time, Felix from the Rascals, they were, you know, Felix was living in Danbury at the time. And, you know, now he's down, they say he's down in Tennessee. But
warmer climate.
They wouldn't commit, you know? So I was the only one that committed. I said, yeah, you know, I'll do it. But when this came about, I said, yeah, man, I'll do it. And thank God I did it. Because
and little did you know, at the end of that whole 3-day extravaganza, that you would be, in effect, closing the show. And that's, like I said.
No, you know, to tell you the truth, I thought that they were going to use Mitch Ryder. I thought they were going to use Mitch Ryder because he did Devil with the Blue. You know what I mean? I think it was slumping, man.
No, you had some good. Jefferson Starship was on there, and you know, Eddie Holman, the late Davy Jones. We talked earlier off air. The late Paul Revere and the Raiders. Just, you know, on and on and on. Just tremendous. Some of them that didn't even make it onto the broadcast, but again, as you said, these people were all there and first-class treatment all the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they pulled so far something like five shows off of there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, the 5 different things. The 50 show, 60 show, our show, like a what do you call it? The folk singers.
Oh, the folk singer rewind.
Yeah, they pulled one of those off. It was just great weekend. A lot of talent there for that entire weekend.
He's amazing. I have not met with the man. I would love to speak to him at some time. Of course, as you attested, his whole crew of people that put those shows together are just top notch from what I've heard. But TJ Lubinsky is amazing because TJ, you know, I don't think he plays this up for many reasons, but I think TJ was born like in the late 60s, so it is amazing. But I guess he grew up in a family of, like you did, of music lovers and people that might have been in the business. So he has this tremendous, he's like a historian of doo-wop,
absolutely.
50s and 60s, amazing. We got an image over here. This is a track from your CD that's in production, we'll call it.
Yeah. I'm doing the final mixes on it now.
And now, what's the CD going to be called? Is there a
Well, I have a variety on this as compared to Long Time Coming is more dance oriented. I still have some funk and some dance stuff on this, but I have some nice. I have some nice things on it. It's hard for me to explain. A little bit of a light Latin stuff, reggae. It's got some nice things.
There you go. Now we were talking earlier. Growing up as a boy, young adult, obviously besides the family and their love of music, but give me like 2 or 3 artists in any genre that really that you look up to, whether you got to meet them or not, but people that are just you know drop dead.
There's so many. I would have to say Ray Charles. I loved Jose Feliciano. I mean, the women singers like Aretha Franklin. I mean, you know, those to me, those people, when they're on stage, they take command. They are incredible. You know, that's only a handful. There's so much talent that it's just amazing. You hate to see those people die.
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean?
We just had the last few months. Christine Ullman was on, who of course is very big here in Connecticut, and a couple of others. Cynthia Lyon from 8 to the Bar was on, and a common thread. A lot of R&B people. Aretha's always on the list. Dusty Springfield, Etta James, Ray Charles, and
Etta
of course,
James.
oh yeah,
Dusty Springfield, I love Dusty Springfield. I love Etta James, B.J. Thomas. I mean, there's so many singers. Johnny Mathis.
Yeah.
I used to listen to Johnny Mathis. My sister, she used to put his albums on all the time.
Now this
That's
picture
the
here,
Orchids.
this is
Frank,
the Orchids.
the baritone player.
Yeah.
That was his wedding.
Wow.
So we went, obviously dressed like that because we were in a wedding party, and we
Oh,
went
I
up and
thought
we
this
performed.
was your normal performing garb. Okay.
No, that was for his wedding.
I was going to say this.
It was. I'm telling you, it was a great band. Two tenors, baritone, trumpet, and a rhythm section. And sometimes we carry 2 trumpets.
There you go. Oh, I have to ask, is, I'm blanking on her name. Who is that woman? Is that the one that was married to the guy from Whitesnake?
Yeah, my friend Marty introduced me to her.
Oh.
I just met her that day.
She was the one that was married to David Coverdale from Whitesnake, and I'm drawing a blank. Anybody in the studio know who that is? I'm sorry? Tawny Katane. Tawny Katane. Now there's yeah. That was worth the price of admission, huh? Lonnie, huh?
She was such a nice lady, I'll tell you.
Bert's ex-wife. There you go. So now you've traveled in some good circles over the years, and now it's amazing because it's almost like a complete renaissance. Your career is just like going places that you never probably thought, other than having the security of having written that big hit.
Yeah, more and more people are becoming aware of me now, which is nice. What hurt me was that it was such a big record all over the world, and people had the record, and no one knew it was me. I told you I do meet and greets even now today, and people will come in. They'll see my stuff, they'll see a poster, and they'll look at the poster. And they got this quizzical look on their face, and I go, "Do you know the song?" And they'll go, "I'm not sure." So then I sing it, and then they'll go, "Oh yeah, I know that song. I know that song." It's like, but I as long as I could stay healthy and get out there and still perform and still write. I love writing, I love being in the studio, and I love performing, especially when you get that feedback from the audience. And I get it with Nana, man. They really let it go.
I mean, it's a song that, like I said, you hear it all the time, everywhere. It just transcends, and as we discussed earlier, other bands, again, the one that I recall was in the late 80s, that group, the Nylons, a cappella no less, did a phenomenal version of the song, and right away I thought, oh, here we are again, and not realizing, because I always heard, oh, Bridgeport. The song, the genesis of the song, as we discussed earlier, was in that office in Bridgeport.
Yeah.
But what a lot of people don't realize, and as you pointed out, there's a lot of inaccuracies about, like we talked about with the disc jockey in Georgia. That's not necessarily true.
Absolutely.
And the band going out and you're not in it, and people are like, what do you mean? They don't get it. It's just, it's a tough business, the music business.
Oh, absolutely. But as I said to you before about when they wanted to split the record, he said to me that I could be both acts, Paul. See, I had known Paul from when we were like 14, 15 years old, because we grew up in Bridgeport together. And eventually he wound up playing piano for the Glenwoods, for the doo-wop group. But anyway, when he went into New York City, he hit it because he had the hit with Green Tambourine and Buddha Records.
Yeah.
But he said to me, you could be both acts. But he was embedding this into my head. You don't have to work with the guys from Bridgeport. I'll get you a group. Don't worry about them. He said, distance yourself from that. I'm saying to myself, why?
Yeah.
Why do I have to distance myself from them? I said, okay, I'll get you a group, he said to me. When it came time for the group, there was no group.
So basically, it would have been a touring group
Yeah.
to follow you, to go
Yeah,
as
exactly.
whatever. But again, that's a big mystery, and
Yeah.
not to tread on sensitive subject, but I mean, anybody in the surviving family members or anybody that has helped shed some light as to
Right.
what the issue was. I mean, I'm just.
No, no. As a matter of fact, I went into Bob Reno's office, who was vice president and was also Paul's manager, and they were friends and partners and everything. And I sat down with him, and Dale came into the office with me, Dale Frazier, the other writer. And I said to Bob, look, I said, put me on the road with this group. I'll do a couple of numbers, let me do Nana. I said, and then when Nana runs its course, I said, they can go off and be Steam, and I'll go off and be Garrett Scott. I said, we can launch two people at the same time.
That was the stage name that you were using at that time.
So Bob said to me, okay. He said, fine. The next day, I'm at my sister's in Stratford, and Paul calls me on the phone, and keeps me on the phone for an hour and a half, telling me over and over again, no, you don't do it, don't do it. So I'm saying to myself, why? So eventually I just got to the point where I had had enough on the phone, and I said, all right, forget it.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah, no, it's still some mystery there, but
Yeah, absolutely, it's a mystery. But you have to understand that there were a lot of things that were being said. They said that I was embarrassed, I was ashamed of it, and I didn't want to have anything to do with it. That's not true.
you helped co-write it.
You know what I mean?
what I'm saying?
That is not true.
Doesn't make
Anybody that knows me, whether it's friends or family from that time, they know that's not true. But the people in the business, they didn't know. They felt that Paul went on to greater glory. Now, believe me, I'm not trying to put down anything that he's accomplished. All I'm talking about is my
Sure.
experience,
Absolutely.
what happened between me and him with Nana.
Been a pleasure having Gary DeCarlo, of course, with his new CD, a long time coming, and we look forward to bigger and better things. Also, there's a book in the works, and Gary will hopefully be back joining us in the not too distant future. Gary, thanks for coming, and we look forward to having you on again. All right. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Studio 411. Larry Dasilva here with you, and we look forward to the next time that we meet, and have a great day. Thanks.